The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Thanks for tuning in this week to a brand new edition of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, the wrestling podcast that brings intelligence, logic, reasoning, context, perspective into the equation and checks the fanboy speak at the door. I'm your host, as always, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at thisisinfamous.com. And, we got some interesting things going on in the world of professional wrestling this week, including the crowning of a new Universal Champion on the Raw brand in the WWE. Last week, following SummerSlam, the SummerSlam aftermath, we learned that newly crowned champion Finn Balor had suffered serious injury in his match with Seth Rollins in one of the co-main events of SummerSlam. And as a result of being put on the shelf for 4 to 6 weeks, actually that's incorrect, 4 to 6 months. If it was 4 to 6 weeks, it would have been a blessing. 4 to 6 months for surgery, recovery, and rehab, forcing the belt to be taken off his waist and given to someone else. Not given to, I guess. Although, maybe that is true. As we'll get into what happened in the events of Monday Night Raw and the crowning of a new Universal Champion. Talk about another departure from WWE a little bit later in the show. I'll also talk about the fallout from the Daniel Bryan Miz confrontation on Talking Smack last week and how that was addressed this week on SmackDown Live. But I guess let's get right into Monday Night Raw, what happened there, where this thing may lead to, and whether or not it was a good or bad booking decision. Overall, Monday Night Raw, once again, pretty solid show. Now, they had some dips. They came out of the draft, and they looked pretty strong. Then they had a couple of dips. And then this week, I thought was a really good show for the most part. You see, now the rest of the show fell in comparison a little bit to overall the main event, with a Fatal 4-Way elimination match, which I thought was fantastic. But throughout the rest of the night, I thought that Monday Night Raw was laid out pretty well. Pretty good show. You had some stretches of really long wrestling bouts. And then you had some squashes mixed in. You know, Sami Zayn and Jinder Mahal squash. Braun Strowman and this Americo guy who I felt horrible for because it was like one of the worst gimmicks I've ever seen. Just sort of sprinkled throughout. So you had really good wrestling matches, as evidenced also by, I thought, Bayley and the New Day being paired up for a mixed tag against Anderson and Gallows and Dana Brooke, who, by the way, no offense, is horrible. I used to be a Dana Brooke defender at one point in time, especially down in NXT. And as I continue to say on the show, she continues to regress on the main roster. She can't sell. She's horrible. Last week I thought maybe having that one-on-one with Bayley, maybe things were going to get better. No, they didn't. They just, that was the anomaly. And by the way, watching Bayley just come out on Monday Night Raw, just pure joy. Every time she now will surface Monday night watching the 3-hour program. The second, there may be a time where like I'm not feeling the show, but Bayley's going to show up, just like that, I'm going to feel instantly better. An injection of positivity, so to speak. So before I get into the Fatal 4-Way elimination match, though, I do want to commend the crowd in Houston, Texas for this Monday night's Raw. That was a hot, lively crowd that was ready, willing, and able to throw themselves into whatever it is that the WWE presented in the ring. Whatever it was. And as a result of that, having that tremendous crowd on hand, it made the difference sitting at home watching it, because you could sense the excitement they had for what they were experiencing. You could sense the enthusiasm. You could tell that what they were watching was good. Now, kudos to the WWE for giving them something worth responding to. But it just goes to show that during a live event, the crowd itself is a character. Much like you have personas in the ring engaging in matches, forwarding angles and storylines, interacting with one another, the crowd itself is also a character. And I think we forget that. I think the WWE forgets it. They try to ignore it. Sometimes they try to tweak it. Sometimes they try to manipulate it and get it to do what they want it to do. So in that case, sometimes you sense a disingenuous reaction from the WWE universe in attendance. But when you just give them something worth responding to, worth reacting to, something to cheer for, something to boo, something for them to gasp at, something for them to applaud, they will. They want to go for the ride. I don't think people understand that frequently enough, is that when you sit down to watch on TV, or when you pay your money to buy a ticket and put your ass in a seat at the arena or the stadium, you want to lose yourself in that world. You want to suspend disbelief. You want to engage with the product. Nobody wants to go watch wrestling and be bored by it or be indifferent to it. They want to go for the ride. And I thought here on Monday night, the WWE gave them enough to go for a ride with. They threw themselves into it. And you got a really quality Raw out of it. You know, the crowd itself, it's sort of the equivalent of, let's say, a laugh track in a television sitcom. The laugh track is there to sort of let you know what's funny, what to maybe respond to, where the punchline of the joke was. Now, not all shows have a laugh track or sort of, applause or laugh cues. And as a result, when you have those shows, different things may be funny to different people. Because funny is funny. But when you know there's a live audience watching something and they're just sort of sitting on their hands and not responding, when you're sitting at home watching that as well, you feel it. You feel that nobody else is into it. Enthusiasm is contagious. It's infectious. So when other people are into something, it is easier for you to get into. When they're not, it's an uphill climb. So kudos to that Houston crowd for really helping make Monday Night Raw's show. Because they were a big part of it. They served their purpose as that live audience character. Helping carry the home audience into that shared passion, that shared excitement. Okay, so let's get into the main event. So you had some good matches throughout. Nothing spectacular, but good. You had some good stuff there. If the main event hadn't existed and you just had the entire show, you'd have been like, it was a good show. It wasn't memorable, but while you were watching it, it wasn't terrible. You wouldn't have turned away. You'd be like, no, I got something out of it. It was good. Noteworthy, maybe not. Good, yes. But so now we move into the Fatal 4-Way, which earlier in the day was announced to be an elimination match, which I thought was a nice wrinkle to add to it. So rather than have 4 guys constantly breaking up pins or submissions trying to save the rest, you could slowly build the match. And they gave the match some good time. You had almost over a half hour to work the match. But the elimination angle being introduced, I thought, gave them so many avenues to go down in order to do the thing that I constantly say the WWE needs on their shows, which is incorporate the air of unpredictability into the match. To put it into the match, you don't want your winner, your champion, to feel inevitable. To feel like an eventuality. Almost like the match itself is just a formality to get to the thing that we all sort of know is going to happen. Especially here with 4 participants who each could reasonably walk out as the champion. That's what you want from your matches. That's what you want from your storylines. You want your fan base to not necessarily know where you're going. Now, granted, there's going to be a line that we move down sometimes where, yeah, certain things are predictable. Because that's what good storytelling does sometimes. It just tells a story in a way that makes sense. So I'm not saying just to zig where you're supposed to zag, for the hell of it, to throw a twist or a turn in there, for the hell of the twist or the turn. But by strongly building different options for you to put on the table, that is where the unpredictability comes in. The fact that you have 4 distinct paths that all make sense to go down. That's what I'm talking about. Not, let's just shock the hell out of people for the sake of shocking them. Let's go this way. Let's make a left turn instead of a right, just because everybody thinks we're going to make a right. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying if you had 4 exits in a row on the highway to get off on, and nobody really knows which exit you're going to take because they all make sense to get to a certain destination. So I thought that was a really solid part of what made Raw, and particularly this match, work, is that by having Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns versus Big Cass in a Fatal 4-Way elimination match, that you presented 4 superstars who reasonably could walk away as the champion. Now, you could look at it and you could say, well, maybe not Big Cass though, Billy. Maybe not Big Cass. He's fresh, he's young, he's new, doesn't feel like the right fit at this moment. If that was him, he might not be ready. Feels like maybe Roman Reigns-ish is somebody who, even though we love him, they're forcing a guy down our throat before he is ready to be that guy. But at the same token, remember, this is the quote-unquote new era. Finn Balor just captured the Universal Championship at SummerSlam after freshly being called up. Granted, he was down in NXT for 2 years as a singles competitor, most of that being the NXT champion. So in some fans' eyes, he will have paid his due. He will have earned that respect. He will have shown that he can carry the torch for a brand. But if we're talking about the air of unpredictability, what better unpredictable winner could there possibly be than the guy you don't think could win? The underdog. The guy who rises up to the challenge and makes his mark that night. You see what I'm saying? You see how Big Cass was presented as a guy that, even though he might not have been on the level of the other three in terms of his WWE standing, had he won, had he upset the other three, given him now a built-in story, you would have popped hard for it. You would have popped hard for it in the arena. You would have popped hard for it sitting on your couch. Because at least there was a legitimate way, a legitimate path to go forward with him had he been given the nod. Now, Seth Rollins, of course, was the other challenger for the Universal title at SummerSlam, has held the title before, the WWE Championship before, within the WWE ranks, so he is automatically a legitimate championship contender. Roman Reigns, as much as we don't want him to win this match, legitimate contender because he's been there before as quote-unquote the guy. And Kevin Owens, who was widely embraced in Houston, Texas, is the guy who's long been on the brink. The guy with tremendous character work, tremendous in-ring ability, charisma and personality, is a heel who fans get behind and also root against. And in addition to that, he is the guy who hasn't tasted it just yet. This is his first real shot at it. So maybe, especially with this new era, this might be his chance to rise to the next level, to have some social mobility in the WWE pecking order, in the hierarchy, on the ladder. 4 individuals who could all legitimately have a chance to walk out of the match as the new Universal Champion, and yet no one was certain as to which one it then might be, because you could make a case for all of them. That is a hell of a main event to schedule and book. Ever. I'm not even just talking about putting it together very quickly and incredibly on the fly coming out of Finn Balor's injury. I'm talking about ever. You make that match happen and you can have a situation where the fans don't know who's going to win. Then you've done your job very well as not only a wrestling booker, but also as a storyteller. Your creative is solid there. So kudos to the WWE in a week's time for legitimately building 4 guys who no one knew who would walk out as the WWE Universal Champion. Now, heading into the match, right before main event time, right before we were getting ready to ring the bell and do the introductions, I said to myself, and out loud, particularly on Twitter, @InfamousKid, follow me, that I think the best thing they could do is eliminate Roman Reigns first. Now, granted, I didn't know how this match was going to play out, like you. I didn't know how this thing was going to get finished up, like you. But I thought the best thing they could have done for the match itself was to eliminate Roman Reigns first. Because if anyone heading into this match felt inevitable, it would have been Roman Reigns. And that's not even going into sort of fanboy fears that, Roman Reigns is automatically going to be resurrected to the top spot on the Raw roster after giving up the title and being suspended for the wellness violation. It just once again had the sense of, is the WWE and Vince McMahon going to double down on this guy who people still just don't like? And the only way I think you could turn the corner with Roman Reigns and maybe one day have people start to like him is to get him out of this situation. Get him out of the main event picture for a little bit. Build his credibility and his respect once more, and then put him back up there. It's addition by subtraction. And considering the way that Roman Reigns had been booed throughout the night, considering the way that Roman Reigns has been received in recent weeks, in addition to the months upon months of strong dislike for him, I thought the way to add that air of mystery, of unpredictability to your main event match is to get rid of the guy that everyone doesn't want to see as the champion first. Because if you do that, you sort of send a message to your fan base: we're not riding this guy anymore, at least for right now. We're going in a different direction. And the excitement then once again feels palpable. People are thrilled at the idea of something different, something new, something fresh, and not necessarily the same old. And so as the match started out and then progressed, I sort of had my fingers crossed for the match itself to remove Roman Reigns from the equation, because I thought it would be better in the long term for everybody. Now, it didn't happen. Big Cass was the first elimination of this match. And he probably should have been. I mean, I have my reasons for thinking Roman Reigns would have worked. I think Roman Reigns' booking would have sort of gone to the Paul Heyman ECW 30-way dance booking decisions of sort of sometimes removing the obvious choice so that everyone can then carry on not knowing where things are happening. And so Big Cass sort of being the lowest man on this four-man totem pole, I could understand. Now, granted, even in losing, Big Cass came away looking like a huge winner on Monday night. Number one, got the rub of being in this championship match with three other legitimate contenders, which is good for his long-term value there. But number two, Colin Cassidy was also up for the challenge and delivered. You never know how people are going to respond in those spots until you put them in those spots. And Big Cass, number one, is over, particularly with Enzo Amore by his side. But I think having Enzo also help him down and be part of his introduction, as usual, gets the crowd into the idea of Big Cass being in the ring. But when the match happened, as the match unfolded, Big Cass was game for being in that match, for delivering something that people could sink their teeth into. For having people not look at him as sort of just one half of a tag team, but as a guy who, as an individual, can hold his own against three really solid competitors. I mean, look, we can say what we want about Roman Reigns, and people could hate on him all they want, but let's not remember, Roman Reigns has been a part of some pretty incredible matches this year alone. The matches with AJ Styles, match with Rusev recently, match with Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns can go with, I think, with the right fit. Sometimes too many Superman punches for my liking. Like in this match in particular. Too many Superman punches. Like, over-reliance on Superman punches. Needs to sort of develop his repertoire, offensive repertoire, a little bit more. But you look at how Big Cass was perceived going into this match, and I thought there was sort of a Roman Reigns perception issue that he might be dealing with, which is that when Roman Reigns was seen as sort of the guy to build upon moving forward, he was also the strong man of the Shield. He was the guy who came in at the end for the high power spots after everybody else sort of carried the brunt of a Shield match. And Roman Reigns was able to come in and shine towards the end, and everybody got excited because of the spears and the Superman punches and the power bombs, and didn't have to get his ass kicked for 20 minutes, which then nobody wanted to see, and once they did see it, we're kind of bored with it. Big Cass, I think, is something similar because Enzo Amore takes most of the beatings of that tag team. And so when Big Cass comes in and he gets the hot tag and he's a house of fire and he unloads on the opponents, people get to see him in that way as opposed to watching Big Cass sort of not be the dominant force. No, I don't think people want to watch Big Cass get his ass kicked for 20 minutes either. But Big Cass, I thought, rose to the challenge. I thought he rose to the opportunity, grabbed the proverbial brass ring that was dangled out there for him to grab as being a part of this match to begin with. And I think following this match, Big Cass can now be seen in another light, legitimately. An earned position, not necessarily one that was given to him. May have been given to him now because people were high on his look, his personality, his size. But he took that and he brought it to the ring and he earned the respect, so I think people can now rally behind or believe in Big Cass if he ever gets an opportunity like this again. So with Big Cass removed, well, we're down to 3. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Kevin Owens. And when you have these 3 components in a match, as much as we're all rooting for Kevin Owens, I think, because he is something different, a breath of fresh air in the main event picture, there is that sense in the back of your mind of, are we going to get Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns again? Like, is this where we're going again? Is it going to come down to them 2 again? And then we're with the idea of, well, does Seth Rollins once again beat Roman Reigns like he always does? Or is this the moment where Roman Reigns triumphs finally over Seth Rollins with such a great prize at stake? And now here's where we zagged instead of zigged. 3 people all sort of laid out ringside. Stephanie McMahon and Mick Foley ringside as the commissioner and GM of Raw. Quite interested with how this match would turn out and who would be crowned the new Universal Champion. And who emerges from nowhere to have a bearing on the outcome of this main event? None other than a returning Triple H, who outside of NXT, we have not seen since WrestleMania. And the first thing he does is delivers a pedigree to the floor, outside the ring, on his nemesis, Roman Reigns. Who defeated him at WrestleMania. After spearing his wife, Stephanie McMahon. So there is an axe to grind there for Triple H to get involved and make sure, guarantee, that Roman Reigns is not the Universal Champion. So upon delivering the pedigree, rolls Roman Reigns into the ring and allows Seth Rollins, the former teacher's pet, his protege of sorts, to score a pin and eliminate Roman Reigns from the match. And then there were two. Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. And at that point in time, with Triple H now in the ring motioning towards Seth Rollins, that this is the chance to sort of reunite, take out Kevin Owens, and put the belt back around Seth Rollins' waist. That is where the swerve now happened. With Triple H delivering a boot to the midsection of the architect of Seth Rollins, unleashing another pedigree on the former chosen one, and laying out Seth Rollins for Kevin Owens to cover. Score a 1-2-3 and become the new WWE Universal Champion. Now, a lot to unpack here. Particularly with Triple H then leaving the ring after raising Kevin Owens' hand in victory. And sort of squaring up and eyeing both Mick Foley and his wife, who at least storyline-wise did not seem to expect Triple H to resurface on this particular night and get involved in what looked to be an on-the-level contest to crown a new Universal Champion. So a lot to unpack. First up, let's start with Kevin Owens. A tremendous honor for the WWE to bestow the Universal Championship upon Kevin Owens. A long journey for Kevin Owens / Kevin Steen to make it to the WWE. Had been all over the world, up and down the road. Seen friends, allies, colleagues, enemies get their shot at the dance, while Kevin Owens did not. While Kevin Owens stayed in Ring of Honor. While Kevin Owens traveled the globe, hoping to continue to make his mark and maybe one day prove himself and catch the eye of Stamford, Connecticut. And so Kevin Owens becoming the new Universal Champion, I think, says a lot for what it means to reach the top of the WWE. And we hear all the time about, having somebody having that it. Somebody being, the face or the next big thing, whatever it is they want to call it. I think the lesson to take from Kevin Owens is that sometimes you just have to go out, night in and night out, and be tremendously good. And I don't mean good in just a general sense of you just got to be good. No, I mean good in the sense of make them unable to not notice you. Be so good all the time that you stand out when compared to anybody else. That there are others who, even if they are being pushed farther than you or higher than you, or they're getting more merchandise put for you, that you still do everything you can with the tools that you have and the small opportunities to make sure that you are noticed. Because since Kevin Owens showed up in NXT, since Kevin Owens showed up in the WWE, he has forced people to pay attention to him. And this is the benefit of that. So, great congratulations on a well-earned, much-deserved honor. And I look forward to seeing what happens with Kevin Owens now moving forward as the Universal Champion. Especially given how brash he is, and now knowing that he is the backing of Triple H, I think there's a lot of possibilities there to explore. Now, I've been seeing a lot of people speculate, well, what does this all mean for Seth Rollins and for Roman Reigns, and how does this all work? What's the reasoning that could possibly be given for the turn on Seth Rollins? Well, number one, let's talk about the Roman Reigns situation. Roman Reigns speared his wife at WrestleMania and defeated him. Triple H was left defeated, embarrassed, vulnerable. And now, this is his vengeance. This is his retribution for what was done to him and his family. This is him laying in wait and playing the long game, quote unquote, to defend the honor of his family. And to try and one-up his rival. At a time when the Universal Championship is on the line. And if we're going back to the best for business idea, maybe Triple H knows Roman Reigns and how much people hate that guy. Not best for business. So, I mean, look, there's sort of a straddling of the line between babyface and heel and what Triple H did with the Roman Reigns. So we're going to have to see how long that plays out. But at least the motivations there are pretty clear for why he would get involved in preventing Roman Reigns from being crowned Universal Champion. Now, the Seth Rollins thing gets a little bit more creative, I think. Number one, you could look at this as saying, well, Kevin Owens was an NXT guy. I mean, that's how he started in the WWE machine, as an NXT guy, NXT champion for a while. And let's also remember that NXT is Triple H's baby. That Triple H was a very vocal part of Kevin Owens finally getting the call to be involved in the WWE machine. That as Triple H rose to power in the WWE operation, the WWE has reached out into corners of the world and into talent pools that previously they hadn't. Whether it be Kenta or Asuka or Finn Balor or Shinsuke Nakamura or Sami Zayn or Neville or Kevin Owens. So you can go sort of meta and have Triple H say, look, we're doing things differently around here. We're changing the way things are happening around here. And as a result, this talent that came through me, that I was responsible for, I'm going to see that they achieve greatness, because that allows me to make my mark on the direction of the WWE. That allows me to take some semblance of control about the direction this company takes. So you can go at that angle. And you could also go with the angle that Seth Rollins just wasn't getting it done. That Seth Rollins had become complacent and entitled and expecting that the authority would have his back and would give him what was needed and would hand him what he believed he should have, rather than prove to them that he had earned it. And for that, Triple H was sort of fed up with someone not willing to put in the work or the hard hours to be the champion, but somebody who just wanted it given to them. Because Triple H never had anything given to him. He had to earn everything. So you can work that angle as well. Either way, there's a number of possibilities there. They all make sense. And I think we'll see how the Rollins-Reigns Triple H dynamic works out, because you could also see sort of a repairing of Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Sort of an enemy of my enemy is my friend situation. But I'm curious to see where they go with Kevin Owens next. How that storyline now moves forward. So I think that is really where my curiosity lies into what is the next chapter of Kevin Owens, or at least the first chapter for Kevin Owens as the Universal Champion. So I want to shift over to SmackDown really quickly, and it is really quickly, because I didn't think there was much on SmackDown to really do anything with. Last week we had the tremendous confrontation on Talking Smack between The Miz and Daniel Bryan. And a lot of people, I thought, wondered, where do we go with that next? What's the next step in that? And the answer was, there is none. Daniel Bryan had a conversation with Shane McMahon to kick off SmackDown, where Shane basically told him not to provoke talent anymore and that he should apologize to The Miz for calling him soft and all the other insults that he levied against him on Talking Smack. On Talking Smack following, Daniel Bryan then did apologize to The Miz. Daniel Bryan claimed that he would no longer be as honest as he had been in the past, which I think is unfortunate because I think that's part of what made Talking Smack so compelling to watch. And Daniel Bryan and The Miz were kept separate with no interaction on SmackDown Live. So you had sort of an angle created last week on Talking Smack that made this week's SmackDown Live a must-see. They made SmackDown something you had to watch this week. You had to watch it. And especially even kicking off SmackDown and showing that Miz promo, shoot, work, shoot, whatever it is that you want to call it last week on Talking Smack. It was so good. Even to watch it again, man, you could feel the emotion and the passion coming from The Miz in those few minutes. And it made you have to go and watch SmackDown this week to see where it was going to happen, what was going to happen next. And then it was squandered because it went nowhere. Now, granted, I thought the opening promo between The Miz and Dolph Ziggler leading to their Intercontinental Championship match at Backlash was good. And I like seeing this new sort of riled up and emotional Miz, another added wrinkle to his personality, being called a coward, being called soft, and maybe toughening him up a little bit in the overall eyes of the WWE Universe so that maybe he can once again ascend to the main event level. I like that. But overall, I thought SmackDown Live was just kind of whatever. I thought a missed opportunity coming off of last week to really build something and get people going with whatever it is that you're putting out there. Still dig what AJ Styles is doing. I'm looking forward to him and Ambrose's Backlash, but I just thought they had a lot of momentum in their favor heading into this week, and they sort of pissed away the opportunity they had. All right, one other note here that I do want to talk about, and then I'll start to close out the show. I want to tell a story before I send you on your way. It appears that Alberto Del Rio is done with the WWE, that he is opted out of his contract, and upon its expiration, he'll be free to then sort of go out into the world and wrestle wherever it is that he wants. Really unfortunate, I think, with Alberto Del Rio. I know people were very excited that Alberto Del Rio came back last year and sort of debuted in high fashion as part of John Cena's U.S. Championship Open Challenge, sort of squashing John Cena in a number of ways before John Cena was sent off to go do his Fox reality TV show. But from there, there just never seemed to be anything that came together for Alberto Del Rio in the WWE. I think he was just a bad fit at this time, and they didn't know what to do with him. They had sort of jettisoned the aristocratic persona that he had with the scarves and the big cars and his own personal ring announcer. And when he left the last time, not being the champion, they didn't really know what to do with him. And I think once again here, not being the champion or not being in the main event, they had no idea what to do with him. And I think that also led to Alberto Del Rio being confused. Was he a face? Was he a baby face? Was he a heel? Sometimes his mannerisms, sometimes his interaction with the crowd led me to believe that even he wasn't quite so sure. I think there was a lot of shorthand that the WWE expected that he would get over right away with people remembering him from a few years ago and the last time he was here. But obviously, they didn't. And they didn't do anything else more to tell you about why Alberto Del Rio was important, why he should matter, why he's a threat, why he's credible, why he's legitimate. None of that. They just said, here's Alberto Del Rio, hope you remember him, and that was it. And then when that didn't really work, And we got that weird Mex America pairing with Zeb Coulter, and that didn't work. Then he was put into the League of Nations, 4 guys thrown together who once again didn't really act like a cohesive team, just seemed to be 4 guys thrown together with a title applied to them. That didn't work. It's been all downhill since Alberto Del Rio's first night coming back. Him opting out of his contract, I don't think is a surprise. I think he's better suited probably elsewhere at this point in time. And farewell, and I wish him the best of luck somewhere else. Right now in the WWE, it just wasn't working out for him. And people shouldn't stick around in situations like this when other opportunities, better opportunities exist out there in the world for them to sort of take advantage of, especially when they're pretty good at their craft. So adios to Alberto Del Rio. I hope the grass is greener on the other side, but there was that note to bring to you. I do want to close out with a story, and then I'll give you all the plugs and send you on your way as I sort of get the go-home cue to wind things down. But I do want to comment on the death of Mr. Fuji, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 82. Mr. Fuji, tremendous manager growing up as a fan of wrestling in the 80s, whether it was the Orient Express or Demolition or the Powers of Pain. Tremendous manager, especially of tag teams along the way. Yokozuna, of course, during his main event run, defeating Hulk Hogan. And there's just actually defeating Bret Hart, and then having a feud with Hulk Hogan. Mr. Fuji was sort of the epitome of the lost art of the manager and what a manager can bring to a heel persona, particularly at ringside. But Mr. Fuji, for me, will always hold a special place in my heart because Mr. Fuji was a part of the main event of the first ever WWE event wrestling card that I ever had a chance to attend. I was in kindergarten, so figure I was about 5 years old or so, and living up in New Jersey at the Brendan Byrne Arena at that time, came to be later known as the Continental Airlines Arena, part of the Meadowlands. The main event at that time was Hulk Hogan, who I was a huge fan of Hulkamania. Hulk Hogan versus the Magnificent Morocco in the main event, with Mr. Fuji ringside as the manager of the Magnificent Morocco. I was so excited to go to this show. I actually got sick earlier in the day. So sick from my excitement. I had to be sort of sent home from kindergarten. That's how excited I was about having the chance to go to a WWE show and watch my hero at the time, Hulk Hogan, wrestle in a ring where I could see it. I could be there. And Hulk Hogan was busted open during the match. He was fighting his heart out in typical Hulk Hogan fashion. The odds just seemed to be stacked against him from the Magnificent Morocco and Mr. Fuji. And towards the end of the match, the referee had been bumped. Magnificent Morocco was unable to put away Hulk Hogan and resorted to heel tactics in the hopes that that would be the final straw for Hulkamania that night. And so holding Hulk Hogan, the Magnificent Morocco did, Mr. Fuji climbed up onto the apron and reached down to grab his handful of salt to throw it into Hulk Hogan's eyes, hopefully blinding him and that being the death knell for Hulk Hogan. But Hulk Hogan moved out of the way and the salt went into the Magnificent Morocco's eyes, in which case he was thrown off the rope, hit with the big boot, followed by the leg drop. And that was all she wrote. Real American cranked up on the sound system. I was ecstatic at this moment. For Hulk Hogan had emerged triumphant. And the efforts of the cheating Magnificent Morocco and Mr. Fuji had been thwarted. And that's a memory that I will always have. As a person, as a wrestling fan, I will always have that memory of that first show, that first WWE show, that very first house card I had ever had a chance to attend. And so vividly I could tell you about Hulk Hogan versus the Magnificent Morocco with Mr. Fuji and Mr. Fuji's role in it. And so on that level, I am incredibly sad about the passing of Mr. Fuji, what he meant to the WWE along the way and over the years, and ultimately what he meant to me as being a part of that first ever WWE show. So, 82 years old, a long, fulfilling life, but thank you to Mr. Fuji for the very distinct memory you were part of creating. And for that, my farewell, I don't know, is ever going to be enough. My thanks, I don't know, will ever be enough. But you gave me something that I will never forget. So with that said, time to get the go-home cue and send you on your way and get you out of here. Make sure you follow us over on social media. At the IWC Show on Twitter, the IWC Show, IWC Show on Twitter. So that'll let you know anytime a brand new episode like this one is released, as well as some other wrestling news along the way as it pops up too, to keep you informed. So at the IWC Show, follow us on Twitter. At Tis Infamous, that's the mothership of This Is Infamous, which is the home of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. So follow us on Twitter there as well for all our interactions and for all the notifications of content that goes up at Tis Infamous, T-I-S Infamous. And myself for all my random ramblings and musings, my stream of consciousness put into the written word in 140 characters or less. Follow me on Twitter at InfamousKid. That's K-I-D-D, Infamous Kid on Twitter for everything that's coming out of my brain. Facebook, 2 pages to like, facebook.com/tisinfamous and facebook.com/BillyTheKid. Always interesting conversation threads to take part of and discussions. So participate, like those 2 pages, get involved, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. You can email me if you got any questions, comments, feedback, things you want addressed on the future podcast, theiwcshow@gmail.com. That's theiwcshow@gmail.com. Send me an email with your name and where you're from, and if it's worth talking about, maybe we'll raise what you bring to my attention onto a future podcast. But I do read all those emails personally, and I will respond back to you. So send one in, theiwcshow@gmail.com. Podcasts can be found wherever podcasts can be found. So you found us here right now for this particular episode, but in the future, whatever your preferred podcast distribution model is, Intelligent Wrestling Conversation can be found there. So iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry, SoundCloud, Google Play, you name it, you can find us there. All I ask is that you go ahead and you subscribe so that you never miss a show. They're all delivered directly to your phone or your tablet, whatever the mobile device is that you're carrying with you. You get every single podcast delivered right to you. You don't have to go out and look for them. They're right there waiting for you to listen to them every single week. So go ahead and subscribe, and then I ask that you also rate and comment. So let us know what it is that we're doing and how you like it. What you think of the show? Helps us tremendously as far as positioning of the show on those particular models, but also lets me know, if you don't want to send an email, how we're doing. So subscribe, rate, comment. Takes a couple seconds, and I will be greatly appreciative of you making the effort. My work can be found on a regular basis. Thisisinfamous.com. Make sure you check it out. Always excellent writing, videos, podcast, reviews for you to check out. Thisisinfamous.com. Good work there on a regular basis, so make sure you dip into that. This has been Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I have been your host, Billy Donnelly. I'll be back next week talking more wrestling with more context, perspective, and of course, intelligence. No fanboys speak aloud. In the meantime, you have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. Congratulations, Kevin Owens. We'll be talking about you next week, I'm sure. I'm out for now. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation has been a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.